Three stories in particular grabbed my attention today. One, the millions without power for a third day in Texas after a once-in-a-lifetime winter storm poured snow and ice across the region, and the partisan finger-pointing that's been going on since. Two, and speaking of partisan finger-pointing, the death of talk radio host Rush Limbaugh, the man who paved the way for the Fox Newses and Alex Joneses and OANs to come. And three, the fact that here in Massachusetts, we're nearly doubling the number of people eligible to get a COVID vaccine in the state. Governor Charlie Baker announced today that people 65 and over, as well as those with 2 or more comorbidities, will be able to register for appointments starting tomorrow. The state also added moderate and severe asthma to its list of qualifying conditions, making around 1 million more people eligible in all. So this time around, Governor Baker is trying to set expectations before the online booking mania begins tomorrow morning.
It's important to remember the federal government only sends states a small amount of vaccine every week. Unless we see a massive increase in shipments from the feds, it will take us at least a month for people in these new groups to be able to book their first vaccine appointment. We have to ask everybody to be patient. There's going to be vaccine eventually for everyone, and everyone will get an appointment. It's just going to take a little while.
And the state is expecting to get at least a little more to administer next week, anticipating about 139,000 first doses, up from around the 110,000 doses a week they've been getting. And many are hoping more help could soon be on the way if Joe Biden's COVID relief package passes. It includes $20 billion for a so-called national vaccine program to accelerate the process. Democrats are aiming to pass the bill by the end of the month, part of an ambitious agenda the party is hoping to tackle with Biden in the White House and majorities in both houses of Congress, albeit slim ones. On their list, everything from student loans and health care to racial equity and climate change, the latter of which Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse has been beating the drum about for years. In fact, he'd been giving a time-to-wake-up speech about climate change on the floor of the Senate nearly every week for about 9 years, almost 280 in total. But with Democrats in power, Whitehouse retired the tradition, giving his final time-to-wake-up address late last month.
A new dawn is breaking. And when it's dawn, there's no need for my little candle against the darkness. So, instead of urging that it's time to wake up, I close this long run by saying now, it's time to get to work. White House, at least on time to wake up, out.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse joins me now. Senator, it's good to see you.
Thanks. Good to be with you. Much appreciated.
Now, did you model that mic drop? I saw a little Kanye, a little Obama in there. Is that who you modeled that on or no?
No, they're way out of my league.
Okay, fine. So, Senator, you're a former U.S. attorney from Rhode Island. Were you to be the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, based on what you know, would you indict Donald Trump for incitement to insurrection and rebellion?
Well, I would certainly make sure that my investigation looked upstream at the organizers. All we know is what he said publicly. We're not aware of how he was linked to the organizers through their back channel communications. We're not aware of how the funding flows worked. I wouldn't want to make that decision until I had a full picture of what was going on. My original worry was that the Trump U.S. attorney in the district was going to just do what we would call a mopes and dopes investigation, picking up everybody who was there that day, but not looking at who organized it, who funded it, who strategized it, and where the president and other political figures fit in that role. So that's work that needs to be done, but I don't want to jump ahead and say that he should be indicted under the criminal law for that while that work has not yet been done.
Just one more thought on this. The federal statute, we'll put it up for a second, it seems to me mirrors the language of the impeachment resolution that you voted for. And by the way, just like Chuck Schumer was hoping for, if he were to be convicted of this, he would be barred from holding federal office. The reason for your reservation as compared to voting for conviction in the impeachment proceeding is because of the different standard of proof. Is that what it is?
Correct. It's proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and it's incarceration and some pretty serious penalties if you come on the wrong side.
So one last criminal thing. I hope you'll humor me for a second. I am of the opinion that Donald Trump's behavior was near homicidal when it comes to COVID. And I'm sure you've read the same things I have, where many experts in the field say the nearly 500,000 dead in this country might be reduced by 350 to 400,000 people, were for it not Donald Trump's malevolence. Is there any possible criminal charge there, or am I too far afield?
Well, certainly there's civil charges that are possible for negligence and for recklessness. There's an old school criminal charge if your negligence and recklessness gets to the point that it is truly cruel. The old-fashioned name for it was the corroded heart doctrine. And there may be a case there to be made, but again, I wouldn't want to make any such assertion without having had a hell of a good look at the evidence and knowing what choices he made that were relevant to that, what he knew, when he knew it. And by the way, whether he has a defense of mental disease or defect that prevented him from knowing the dangerousness of his actions.
That's a very good point. But by the way, if there ever was a corroded heart, I would argue it's a slam dunk in that particular setting. You and six of your Democratic colleagues are asking for an ethics investigation of two of your other colleagues, Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz. What's the basis for the request?
We don't know what their relationship was with the rioters and with the groups that organized the rioters. Worst case scenario, and in the prosecution business, you run down hypotheticals and try to prove or disprove them. Worst case scenario, they were asked to object to the electoral votes in order to keep the window of time open to allow the rioters the chance to actually break into the Capitol and do their damage while the process was still ongoing. That we don't have evidence of, but there certainly are evidence of links between, for instance, Senator Hawley as a former Republican Attorney General and the role of the Republican Attorney General's association in organizing the riot. We just need to know exactly what happened.
You know, I don't know you personally, Senator, but I would assume that if there was a Democrat who was president who had said your wife was ugly and that your father participated in the assassination of JFK, like Donald Trump said of Ted Cruz, is it fair to say you'd not be a big-time supporter of that Democrat?
Some jobs aren't worth having at the price of your principles and your conscience, and an insult to your family like that, yes.
Amen. COVID relief appears to be a Democrat-only affair, possibly in both houses. But as you know much better than I, you can't do everything with 50 votes plus Kamala Harris in the Senate. Where are you on this issue, controversial issue, all the way up to the White House, of abolishing the filibuster so Democrats wouldn't need to find at least 10 Republicans to pass other major legislation?
Well, right now, as a Democrat senator, we have 3 separate reconciliation measures available to us in this Congress alone. We can use one on COVID if we need to. We can use one on Build Back Better if we need to, and that leaves yet another in the following year. So we have opportunities to do really, really big things without needing to break the filibuster. I do think that for some of our colleagues, it's going to take some really demonstrated bad faith obstruction by Republicans to get them over the hump and to perhaps selectively break the filibuster for specific measures. We've got colleagues who've said we're not going to get rid of the filibuster, period. But whether on a specific measure they might be willing to, or whether we can reform the filibuster, are questions we still need to work our way through.
You know, I met you shortly after you gave not your first, by a long shot, tutorial on dark money in politics. All of America was watching. It was obviously during the Amy Coney Barrett hearings. I'm embarrassed to say, until I was reading something a couple of days ago, I was not aware of this case before the Supreme Court of the United States, which could arguably, if the plaintiffs succeed, cloak dark money, anonymous contributions, in First Amendment protection. Could you briefly describe not only what the case is about, but what the consequences is of a victory for whatever it's called, Americans for Prosperity or some such thing would be?
Yeah. Well, it's a nothing of a case. It's a case that specifically involves how much taxpayer information the IRS can share with state authorities. In this case, the state of California, which is why former Attorney General, I guess still Attorney General until he's confirmed, Becerra is the named defendant. But the first thing that flags that something more than that might be up is that the plaintiff is Americans for Prosperity Foundation, which is the funding group, the 501c3, affiliated with Americans for Prosperity, which is the Koch brothers' enormous dark money political operation. And then, if that starts to ring your bells a little bit, you look at the groups that have come in as what they call friends of the court, amici curiae, they call them. At the cert stage, at the do we take this case stage, the Supreme Court had over 60 briefs from right-wing dark money outfits. It was basically the gathering of the clan. Even in cases that I've been involved in, like the Commodities Futures Trading Commission case, which really rings the Republican right-wing bell, we only got maybe 12 to 20 of those groups involved. Here it's over 60. So something big, in their view, is happening in this case. And what it is the prospect of having this Supreme Court, on which they've, with their dark money, influenced the selection of the last 3 Supreme Court justices, to get this court to say exactly what you just said, that anonymous political funding is not something to be afraid of, as the Supreme Court said 8-1 in Citizens United. It was basically the one thing they got right, the transparency helps. But reversed themselves with the 3 new judges by flipping Alito and by having Thomas, who was always there, and now saying there's a constitutional right to dark money. That's their goal, in my view.
By the way, the one was Clarence Thomas. Am I not correct in that 8-1?
Correct.
I'm fairly safe.
Correct.
You know, speaking of this, that's terrifying to me. Speaking of the Supreme Court, I've read you say you were hoping that the Democrats will, and Joe Biden obviously, will move quickly to confirm court appointments, nominations for every open seat, because the Democrats may not control the Senate in 2020, after 2022. In that spirit, Steve Breyer, who lives about a mile from me, is 82 years old. Should Steve Breyer retire in the next 2 years so that Joe Biden can pick a replacement with Democrats in control?
Well, Justice Breyer gets to make his own decisions about that, but I hope that in making his decisions, he takes into account the fact that if Mitch McConnell and the Republicans are able to take the Senate back, there is zero chance that they would fill his seat with anybody that Joe Biden would agree to. So, you know, part of your legacy in any position is who follows you. And I just hope he gives that some consideration. But he certainly gets to make that decision in his own way. He's been an independent thinker for a long time, and I don't want to be instructing him as to what to do.
What if he asked for your advice?
I'd give it privately.
So do you foresee a day when you'll ever be able to drop the mic on your dark money campaigns, or is this with us for eternity?
No, I think we can win this, but we got to start paying attention to it. You know, Donald Trump was such a flagrant offense to so many different things. He was such a dazzling spectacle that all the attention went to him. And in the meantime, this insidious, creeping dark money influence just kept going and going and going, and we weren't paying the attention to it that we should have. If we pay attention to it, we can solve it. There are legislative ways to solve it if the Supreme Court doesn't give it constitutional protection. And we have, I think, a real, in defense of our Constitution, our democracy, we have to defend it. Because otherwise, you have a country in which big special interests can run covert operations in and against their own country nonstop, and nobody as a citizen knows what's going on. That can't be our democracy. So, and final point, whether you're a Bernie bro or a Tea Partier, right across the spectrum, you hate dark anonymous special interest money. This is an issue that pulls off the charts with the public across the political spectrum. So if we have the courage to engage, I think we can bring the public with us and win.
Sheldon Whitehouse, good luck with the campaign. Good to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me on again.